All right, we're going to move on to look at a few more useful things that we can do in Excel. So on Blackboard, I'm going to download the file again. It's under Materials, Pre-Work, and I'm going to go back to the Excel Skills file that we had before. So I'll download that, I'll open it up, and that's what we'll use. So enable editing. We're going to go over to addressing first. So what we want to do in here is figure out how to do absolute versus relative versus mixed referencing. So we've looked at this a little bit before in some of the other videos, but now we're going to try to do a little more focused on this one particular thing. So what we have here is in these blue cells, what I would like to do is take the column heading, right, or the row heading, right? So in row 4, 60, add to it whatever's in the column, in this case E, so 60 plus 10, and multiply times the multiplier. So that's 70 times 5, so you can do that math in your head, that's 350, right? And then after I put that formula in cell E4, I would then like to be able to drag it down and over, right? So that it copies properly. So let's try it. So we're going to do 60, so D4, plus E3 times our multiplier. All right? So before I hit enter, you should think about whether or not that's going to give me the 350 that I said it should be. Hit enter. No, it's wrong. What did we do wrong? Well, you have to remember your order of operations, which are over here, right? So PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, is the way I learned it way back when. I'm not sure what naming stuff you may have learned. So parentheses first, then exponents, then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction at the same level for that guy. So what that means is we need to put parentheses around the addition because I want the addition to happen first. So the 60 plus the 10 will be 70 times the multiplier, which is 5. That should now give us 350. Right? And it does. So now we're doing it right. So now the question is, I would like to be able to drag this down, right? So it'll be 70 plus 10, which is 80, plus 5 should increase by 50 each time, right? No, what's happening? Well, now we have zeros. That's not good. So if I double click into the cell, we see what happened is that the first one, D5, came down like I wanted it to. So it's pointing to that 70. But now instead of pointing to E3, it's pointing to E4, so that came down also. Additionally, it dropped from B3 down to B4. So I have 70 plus 350, but I'm multiplying it times this blank cell over here in B4, which is a 0, which is why I'm getting zeros. Remember, we can show all formulas by hitting Control tilde or Control grave accent, and we see that it's always dropping down for each one, right? So we can see that it's not doing what we want it to do. So let's try to fix this. So I'm gonna go back into E4, and I am going to try to the easiest thing I think is to start with the multiplier. So I always want it to point back to the same cell that contains a 5, right? So to do that, I notice where my mouse is, my cursor is in between B and 3. If I hit F4 one time, that makes it absolute reference. That means it will be anchored or locked into cell B3. So no matter where I drag this formula around now, it will always point back to cell B3. So let's see if that works. So it doesn't change anything here, which is what I expected. But now I do expect it to change as I drag it down. Okay, we have numbers other than 0. That's good. But this should be 400, 450, right? We're adding 10 each time here and multiplying by 5, so it should be going up by 50 each time. So let me look. All right, so what did it do? It's pointing to B3 like I want, but now it's still coming down. So it came down to E4. I want it to point always to E3. 3 right there, right, for this one particular column. All right, so I'm going to go back into the E4, and on E3, if I do this, right, make it absolute, so it's anchored to both the column and the row. The dollar sign is in front of both the column label and the row label. And if I drag this down, will it give me what I want? Yes, it does, right? So that's good. Except for, I said originally, I want to also be able to take this formula and drag it this way. Is that working? I can almost guarantee no, because look at this, right? Look how big that is, right? So what's it doing? It's always pointing back to E3 over here, even though, right, I don't want it to do that, right? I want it to point up to here. So that's not good. So I'm just going to hit Control Z 2 times there to get back to this. So what do I need to do instead? Well, I want it to stay on this row. So I've got little cheat sheets over here. When I'm copying left to right, right, and up and down, or both, then I'd say what I'm trying to do here. So if I come in E3, so I want it to be always in the same row. So if I hit F4, notice where my cursor is. It's on the E3. It's after the E. Hit F4. That will anchor it to the row, which is exactly what I want, right? So let me try bringing it down. This should still work. It does. Now if I drag it over, well, I'm getting different numbers than I had before. What's it doing now? Now if I look at it, well, it's coming over to where I want it to go to, right, to that correct column, staying in that row. But now it's bringing this column that I wanted to 60, 70, whatever, and it's bringing it to the right. All right, so I'm pointing to the same row. That's good, but it's bringing this other guy to the other side. So I'm going to hit Control Z a couple times. And so that means now I need to work on this first one, this D4. So I want it to stay in the column. So if I hit F4 one time, it'll always point to D4. That's not what I want, because I need to be able to drag it down and to the right. So if I hit it again, it'll always point to row 4. That's also not right, because if I want to drag it down, I want it to go to D5, D6, etc. So if I hit it one more time, it'll anchor on the column, but the row will change. That is what I want, I believe. So let's hit Enter. Let's drag this guy down. All right, so now we're doing okay that way. Now if I drag it to the right, that looks like it's working, right? Yeah, so that looks like it's working. It's pointing to the correct column, right? All this, and multiplying it. So we have to understand, right? The goal is to make sure, when you know which way you're copying formulas, to know whether you need relative reference, which means it will always move, right? Here we don't have a strictly relative reference. We could use absolute, where it always points back to the exact same point, like we do for B3. If we want it to always point to the same row, then we put the dollar sign in front of the row number, like we have for E3 in this formula shown. And if we want it to stay in the same column, we put the dollar sign in front of the column heading, which in this case is column D for D4 there. Right? And then we can, over here, we might want to add stuff up. Remember, the shortcut key for that is Alt+. Notice when I do that, it grabs that header that is 60, which it doesn't know anything about, so I can click and drag it that way. All right, then I can fill it down like so. And I could do Alt+ down at the bottom. Again, it grabs that header of 10, which is not what I want, so I can do that. And then I can autofill this guy across by dragging it. Right. So that is absolute referencing, relative referencing, mixed referencing, and making sure we have our order of operations also working for us.